We're in God's Word today. We are going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 8. Says this, "But I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for them if they remain as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, let them marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion." I've got more I'm going to talk about, but this is pretty clear, right? The conversation before this that Paul was having was regarding sexual immorality and how and what that should look like within a marriage. And he tells you, it's like, if you have a capacity to be able to contain all those desires and pursue the Lord, then you ought to stay that way. And he says that, well, because that's what he's done, and he's seen the value of being able to be completely free from any hindrances of relationships so he can serve the Lord. And that doesn't mean it's for everybody, right? I think that's really important. It's actually not for most people at all. But some people have been given a call to singleness, and that's a part of how they live their life, and they can serve the Lord at a very high capacity in that particular role. But he says, you know what? For most of you, right, you have desires for the opposite sex, and so therefore you should come together and be married, and not allow that to continue to be something that just burns within you. But get married. That's a good thing. And then he goes on, verse 10. "But now to the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord. A wife is not to depart from her husband. But even if she does depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and a husband is not to divorce his wife." So he says here in verse 10 and 11, right, the idea and the foundation behind marriage is that two people were never designed to get divorced, right? And that if somebody were to say, "Listen, I just want to divorce you," for what reason? "Well, I fell out of love with you," then that person, frankly, would be better off never getting married at all again, but rather choosing to be reconciled and working through what God's plan for a marriage actually look like. And he gives both the command to the women and the husband. And then he goes on this, verse 12. "But to the rest, I, not the Lord, say," and so Paul makes that distinction, right? That is, as he's been watching different situations that have taken place, he's wanting to give some clarification based on the things that he's seen. "If any brother has a wife who does not believe, and she is willing to live with him, let him not divorce her. And a woman who has a husband who does not believe, if he is willing to live with her, let her not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Otherwise you and your children would be unclean, but you are now holy." Right? "But if the unbeliever departs, let him depart. A brother or sister is not under bondage to such cases, but God has called us to peace. For how do you know, O wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, O husband, whether you will save your wife?" And so now Paul's talking about a very interesting situation where people are married, but they're now unequally yoked. Right? Somebody gets saved in a marriage, and now they're saved, and the husband or wife is like, "This is insane. I'm out of here." Right? "I'm leaving." And in those cases, Paul says, it's okay. Let him go. Just let him go. But if they say, "You know what? I'm still want to be married to you, and I'm still going to live with you, and I want to be a part of this marriage that we made, even though you're a believer and I'm an unbeliever," then you need to stick it out, right? That there's actually a blessing in that opportunity, so that you might be able to potentially bring that loved one, that husband, to the Lord. Also, he talks about the kids being involved. Every time there's a divorce, it's destructive, right? It absolutely breaks not just two people, but all those down the line have to go through the heartache and heartbreak that exists there. So he says, listen, it's better that you guys are going to stay together because you have an opportunity, one, to speak into your kids' lives and show them what it looks like, to have the grace and mercy of the Lord, even living with somebody who's a non-believer. You have an opportunity to share the truth, the gospel with your kids, not to mention your spouse who might, and that's the hope and the prayer, that they would come to the Lord. So he does give a distinction when it comes to divorce. And usually when we look at this, there's a few cases, right? You've got adultery, right, which is one that divorce has been allowed because of the hardness of a heart. You have, I would say, abuse if you're in physical danger. I say some of the other kinds of abuse are very difficult to look at. And then you have abandonment. Right? Abandonment, when somebody just up and leaves. I would almost say, too, in some cases, we would call it constructive abandonment, where somebody has basically left the vows of the marriage even though they still live in the home. Those are the cases of that abusive situation where it's like, you know what, it is time to move on. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of distinction. I think the most clear thing that we do have is a situation where adultery takes place, divorce is allowed. But you know what? God's purpose and God's plan has always been for forgiveness, for reconciliation, a hope that two people can come and work through some of the most hard and difficult things. And so I challenge you, look at your marriage, look at where you're at, right? I want you to work towards a place where you're honoring the Lord, where you do have forgiveness, where you're meeting one another's needs in many cases. And it's such an important thing, and God uses marriages, even those that are now unequally yoked, to be such a great honor and glory to Him. Maybe you're just the one who might be able to bring your spouse to the Lord. Live your life that way.